Welcome back to the 2-Minute Warning. Today I'm looking at who will win the AFC North in 2021 between the Bengals, Steelers, Ravens, and Browns. But before getting into that topic, excuse me, question for those of you viewing, an opinionated question. Who do you think has the best rivalry within that division all time? Think it's Ravens, Steelers, Steelers, Bengals, Browns, Ravens, whatever it is. Comment below what do you think it is and I will reveal my answer at the end. But getting into the topic, just breaking it down, going straight into it, looking at the quarterback position and who is the best within that division. In my opinion, I would personally think Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson are the top two quarterbacks in that division. Big Ben's probably going to be his last year in Pittsburgh. I still think he's a good veteran to have on your team, and I would probably take him over Baker Mayfield, but compared to the rest of the league, he is no longer a top 10 quarterback in my opinion. Joe Burrow, I do think, has the most long-term talent and will probably be the best quarterback in that division long-term. But as of right now, Lamar Jackson might take it away as the best quarterback today just because the electricity he has in the run game. Long-term, I'm not sold on him because I think once he turns 31, 32, and he's not the fastest guy in the NFL, he will not be able to rely on his arm. So long-term, I think Burrow's the best quarterback today. I'd probably go Lamar. And then I would probably go Big Ben and then Baker ranking last. Sorry, Browns fans. However, that is probably the last position I will rank the Browns in quarterback. Moving on at running back, Browns easily take this one, having the best run game in the division. Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, arguably the best backfield in the NFL between two running backs. In my opinion, it's close between, you got Chris Carson and Carlos Hyde or Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette. There's other great backfields in the NFL, but I think Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt might honestly be the best backfield in the NFL. Then at number 2, I'd go with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins from the Baltimore Ravens, and you kind of have to throw Lamar Jackson in that mix for the run game factor because that's what he does probably just as much as he throws 50% of the time. Next, I would go with Joe Mixon in the Bengals, even though he's inconsistent and very injury prone. I do think he has raw skill and talent. And then ranking dead last, who's probably dead last in the NFL in general, it's going to be James Conner in the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's been banged up. Their offensive line's been banged up, but overall, they just have zero run game at all, and that's really what cost them from going far in the playoffs and just what cost them a lot of their season. They got 11-0, and they had a successful season, but really you can only go so far if you have zero run game. Look at the Bills for another example. You had pretty much every component to their team set except a run game, and they got stopped in the AFC Championship. Moving on to the receiving core, when healthy, I would probably go with the Cleveland Browns, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, Rashard Higgins, and then at the tight end position, you got David Njoku and Austin Hooper. And really, this Browns team had a pretty solid offense last year with OBJ being out pretty much the whole season, Austin Hooper being banged up, Njoku being banged up, Landry being banged up, some guys being missing due to COVID. They held their own pretty well due to a lot of injuries, and I do think being a healthy roster, this is the best receiving core in that division. Number 2 would go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This could change if they lose Juju Smith, but right now, having Juju Smith, James Washington, Chase Claypool, and Eric Ebron, they got a pretty solid set of receivers. Really young, only getting better. Eric Ebron, he's not really young anymore by any means. Chase Claypool and Juju Smith are kind of best friends, I guess, and I don't see Juju going anywhere, so I'm going to include him in this receiver core just because he's always played at the Steelers. He's got a great relationship with Chase Claypool. Unless the Steelers don't want him, I see him coming back if it's up to him. Moving on, I would go to the Bengals. AJ Green, probably not going to be a Bengal next year. John Ross, probably not going to be a Bengal next year. But technically, if they for some reason came back, I'm including them. But even outside of them, they have talent in T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Auden Tate. So I like this Bengals receiving core. It's really young, just like the Steelers, and they're only going to get better and help out Joe Burrow in the long run. Then dead last, Baltimore Ravens. They don't have a good receiving core in the NFL, let alone in their division. Marquise Brown, plenty of speed. Mark Andrews, great hands, great tight end. But they don't have a lot of size, and the get up and go get it kind of receiver. Marquise Brown only being 5'9". Antonio Brown's cousin, for those of you who don't know. Willie Snead, he's got hands, but like I said, there's no big go up and get it type of receiver. Des Bryant flashed in and out for the Ravens. He won't be back. So really, they need to make a huge offseason move for if they want to compete with the type of receiving core they have amongst the division. They are dead last in that. Looking at the offensive line, Cleveland Browns, highest paid offensive line in the NFL. That typically gets you to be the best position at that point in the NFL, so they are going to take number 1 in the division for the best offensive line. Number 2 and 3, it's a toss-up between the Ravens and Steelers. I do have the Ravens ahead of the Steelers, and they are losing a Pouncey brother due to retirement, and clearly you saw their run game wasn't the greatest last year, which is kind of a factor of the offensive line. I know they can't, run the ball themselves, but it definitely was a factor for sure why they didn't have a run game. And then dead last would be the Cincinnati Bengals. Pretty obvious. We saw what happened with that bad offensive line. They lost their starting quarterback in Joe Burrow, and he got hurt because he didn't have the protection. So pretty simple. Browns, Ravens, Steelers, kind of a toss-up, but I would go Ravens, then Steelers, then Browns for the offense. So pretty much the Browns rank number 1 in every offensive category except quarterback. I do have them ranking last in the quarterback position. I don't dislike Baker Mayfield. I don't think the Browns have a whole lot of options outside of him. I just think he's more of a game manager than this guy that could go out and succeed and carry the team like Russell Wilson does. Like Russell Wilson and, Deshaun Watson and Aaron Rodgers, they're just winners. Deshaun Watson's kind of a bad example because this is past year, but still that raw skill and raw talent Baker Mayfield doesn't have like those other guys, and I'm not sure his work ethic is all the way there as well. I'm sure he works hard, but still, I just think he's the bottom in this division, in my opinion. He might be able to pass Big Ben, but I don't have him above Lamar or Joe Burrow by any means. Moving on to the defense, looking at the front 7, hard to argue against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They got a top 5 defense in general. And looking at their front 7 and Cameron Hayward, T.J. Watt, Bud Dupree, and Devin Bush, a couple of those guys were hurt late in the season, which kind of hurt their 11-0 run. Bud Dupree will be a free agent. I could see him going back to the Steelers, but honestly, I see him chasing a big paycheck, and I don't think that will be with the Steelers, so that could affect them. But as of right now, the Steelers do have the best front 7 in that division, in my opinion. Number 2 would probably go to the Browns. Just like T.J. Watt, I don't want to say carries the Steelers, but he's definitely the best defensive player on that Steelers roster. Same thing for the Browns and Myles Garrett. He carries them a lot. Of course, there's other talent, Sheldon Richardson, Olivia Vernon, Malcolm Smith. The Browns do have talent, but Myles Garrett, that's their bread and butter type of guy. He's one of the best defensive ends in the league, and he's a big reason the Browns made number 2 on this list. Number 3, I would go with the Baltimore Ravens. Derek Wolfe, Brandon Williams, Calais Campbell, whole 6'8" giant of them, used to be part of Saxonville and the Jacksonville Jaguars. You got Matt Judon and Yannick Ngakoue. Yannick Ngakoue will be a free agent. However, this front 7 is really solid, and really this is probably the only division they'd be the 3rd best front 7 in football. They have a really solid front 7, a lot of young talent, a lot of guys that have raw talent that could get pressure on the quarterback. They struggled a little bit at times, but the raw talent is there, and I do think it would just take another year of clicking and being together for one more year for them to be really a serious pass rush, in my opinion. Then last would be the Cincinnati Bengals. They have Geno Atkins and Carl Lawson, but that's really it in their front 7 that really stands out, in my opinion. You lost Carlos Dunlap, Geno Atkins' partner for the past decade or so, to the Seattle Seahawks. Still have talent in Geno Atkins and Carl Lawson, but they're not enough to carry this front 7 by any means. So I do have the Pittsburgh Steelers ranking in the top front 7. That is a good thing on their part. Then moving on to the secondary, I would probably go with the Steelers again. Minka Fitzpatrick, one of the best safeties in football. Joe Hayden is always able to hold his own. And Steven Nelson as well is really talented. But really, it's a toss-up between the Steelers secondary and the Baltimore Ravens. Got Marlon Humphrey, Jimmy Smith, Marcus Peters. That is a talented cornerback trio, I guess you could call it, in the Ravens. But they kind of lack at safety at times. And I do think the Steelers, secondary is better overall through cornerback and safety, so I do think the Ravens can hold their own at quarterback and cornerback and even be better. The Steelers at cornerback and safety is where they lack when comparing to the Steelers. Moving on to number 3 in the secondary, I'd probably go with the Cincinnati Bengals, Jesse Bates, Von Bell, and William Jackson, who will be a free agent. I think he'll be back though. Great young secondary there that will only get better, and then dead last would probably be Denzel Ward on the Cleveland Browns. He is a great corner, can hold his own against everyone, but their slot corner and safety isn't the greatest with Carl Joseph and Kevin Johnson. Definitely need to work on some things there. And then last but not least, coaching staff. Who's best coach in this division? I'd probably go with the Ravens. I like John Harbaugh a lot. Yeah, Kevin Stefanski won Coach of the Year, and that's why I'll give him number 2 on this list. But I'm not going to put him over John Harbaugh, who's had a decade of experience with the Baltimore Ravens, has won a Super Bowl, and has done great things for that team. Number 3, gonna go with Mike Tomlin in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yes, I put Stefanski over Mike Tomlin. I'm not the biggest fan of him, but he's still a viable coach, and I think he's better than the young guy, Zach Taylor, on the Bengals, who is going to get one more year with the Bengals, and I'm not sure he's going to be the answer for them long term. So, overall, Steelers probably had the best defense. Browns probably had the best offense outside of the quarterback position. Bengals or Ravens had the best quarterback, and Ravens had the best coaching staff. Winning the division, in my opinion, will more likely than not be the Cleveland Browns, even though I have their quarterback dead last. I have them winning the division just because really the only thing they need to work on is the defensive side of the football, and they can worry about that strictly in free agency in the NFL draft. All the other teams, they have just 1 to 2 to 3 holes where the Browns just got a couple things to fix. And really, they went 11-5 last year, and like I said, that's with having some guys being missed to COVID, some guys being banged up, some guys being gone the whole year. So once you get a healthy receiving core of Odell, Austin Hooper, David Njoku, Jarvis Landry, Rashard Higgins, this is a very potent offense, and really, they could even trade Odell Beckham Jr. to help out that defense, get a bit of a draft capital and a couple assets to help out the defensive side. They went 11-5 without Odell, so they might want to trade him and say our offense is fine without him. Let's get some draft capital and some assets to help out the defense. That would be a move I'm okay with, and even if they don't, Odell Beckham would definitely help the offense once he comes back. So I do have them winning the division. I think the Ravens will be their closest opponent, have the best chance at winning it because they themselves don't have many problems, but they definitely need to fix up some things. The offensive line, the receiving core, and maybe an extra safety would help. The Steelers, I have them going 3rd. I still think they have a top 5 defense, but Big Ben being a damn fossil and not really having a great work ethic and taking care of himself to last like Tom Brady, I don't see them being great. I could see them still being a playoff team, but I don't see them going on an 11-0 run by any means and finishing 12-4. And then the Cincinnati Bengals, unfortunately, Joe Burrow might be the best quarterback in your own division, but the talent around you is just not there. It's not completely absent, but it's just not enough to overcome these other 3 teams that are possible playoff teams. Unfortunately for Burrow, the AFC North is either the hardest or the second hardest division in football behind the NFC West. So I got the Browns winning the division. I got the Ravens making the playoffs and being second or even winning the division outside of the Browns. I have both teams making the playoffs. Steelers will be number 3, and they have a chance at a wild card. Burrow and the Bengals, however, will be 4th and miss the playoffs, in my opinion. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Who do you think will win the AFC North? I got the Browns. And who do you think is the greatest rivalry within that division all time? For me, it's hard to argue against the Ravens and Steelers, but let me know, like I said, down in the comments. Thanks for watching, guys. 2-minute warning.